What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Beneath the Beat podcast. We've got another really special guest today. His name is Evan Taylor. He's got a brand new single out called Gratitude. You can find it on any major platform, so please go and show your support to him. He's played with so many casts all over the state of Michigan and now even in Utah. So please, without further ado, welcome Evan Taylor.
Yeah, that was a dope introduction.
Thank you.
Though those parts of my career are maybe, less prominent than others. Definitely willing to include those though. So I've actually only ever had one gig with Delfeo Marsalis.
Okay.
He came through Salt Lake City on tour, and they had a show at Rice Eccles Theater. And basically what happened is actually the New Orleans airport shut down due to some weather. And so Delfeo reached out to the community. It was like, who can we grab right off the bat? And I just happened to be around, and he actually was at the University of Utah doing a clinic, and I jumped up and played with him, and we played a couple tunes or whatever. And then he emailed me that night and was like, looks like you're on the gig tomorrow. And I thought he was joking. When I woke up and I found out that literally a bunch of cats couldn't make it out of New Orleans, and he had to hire local musicians and all this stuff. So,
man.
But it ended up being a super tight gig. I got to meet Jeffrey Miller and play right next to him. And just man, the way those cats play is so dope. But I just wanted to clarify, I don't frequently tour with Delfeo. That was just kind of a one-time thing. And it was amazing. That's great show.
Really cool, man.
Dude, that's really cool happenstance. You know what I mean?
Totally.
That's crazy.
Well, also speaks volume to the waves that you're making. So this happened in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
So the waves that you're making in Salt Lake City, it's okay, so I just lost a lot of my regular musicians. Who am I going to call? And your name was right up there, which is super.
One of those.
That is such a really, really awesome thing to have in case that ever happens again. You know what I mean? And you're young, you're still making a lot of waves, but just the fact that, what are you, 25, 26?
I'm actually 23.
Oh, okay.
Little baby over here.
Yeah, I'm a little baby boy.
So you're a baby. Well, Zach's a baby. You're a little baby compared to me. I'm 29. But the fact that you're already doing that at 23, and how old were you when this happened? Were you 23 or were you 22?
I was 22 when it happened.
22 years old, getting called up by Delfeo Marsalis. That is so cool at such a young age. And it's only up from here, man. That's super cool.
Well, I think that's also an example of you got to put in the work. You know what I mean? You got to put in the work beforehand. Because imagine if you hadn't put in the work beforehand, and then you got up there and you blew a couple tunes with them when they were at the clinic, and you sounded like crap. And then guess what? You don't get the call for that gig. You know what I mean?
Very possible.
Yeah. It's all about putting the work. When that preparation meets the opportunity, it's there it is.
Totally. Yeah, and it was just one of those things that just, I feel like it was just kind of a right place, right time type of deal. And so I was super thankful for the opportunity. And at Delfeo, we all went out to dinner afterward, and I got to just hear stories and listen to him talk. And I think that in itself was a privilege, just to be able to sit there and hear his perspective. Again, we talk about perspective, just hear the stories of when he was young and touring, and the mistakes he made. And there were certain things that he called me out on, parts of the show where he was so, hey, during that one part, why did you do this specific thing? And I was well, I thought that's how it went. He's well, no, that's wrong. And I'm oh, okay, cool. But and part of that is, what an older cat sees a young person starting to, take off or do their thing, they want to mess with them a little bit, just totally. To rough them up. Yeah. So there, some of it was that, but there's other parts where I totally looked at it as wow, he's right. I did mess up that spot. And now I have that going forward. The next gig, when it gets to that part of the tune, it's that response time is going to be quicker. And, so no, I for real, man, I just feel blessed and thankful for that opportunity. I know there's people out there who would love to play a show like that, and I'm so thankful, man, that Delfeo even considered me for a gig.
But I also think they say success comes from hard work and also like a stroke of luck. I think that stroke of luck though is presented through that hard work. That hard work of not only playing but like communicating and also just like knowing your surroundings, knowing the people, like knowing people. That good luck is made through that still.
Totally.
So
totally,
you were able to play that gig. It's happenstance, like it's like right people at the right time. But at the end of the day, you created that. If you didn't do these certain X, Y, and Z, that situation would have never happened. You wouldn't have learned that valuable lesson.
Yeah, that's real. Well, thank you for that, man. That's
man.
Dude, well, what you were saying about hanging with the cats, like hanging with the cats is like, I feel like one thing that a lot of people don't realize in the music industry is like, first off, yeah, there's going to be happenstance and things like that. Like that's going to happen. But if you're not a good hang, like you're not going to get a gig. It doesn't matter how good of a player you are. Like you got to be a cool person. So like if you ever get to that point where you're like, man, I'm way better than these cats. I shouldn't be playing here. This is a bullcrap gig. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, screw off, man. Like you know what I mean? Like get your ego out of it, because when all the cats that I've talked to are like such humble people. You know what I mean? Like when I was in college, Wayne Bergeron came in and did a clinic at CMU. And then we also got to play a concert with him. And in rehearsal, it was so funny because, I mean, he's Wayne Bergeron, right? Like, this dude does not miss, right? And he up there, he's like, oh, I'm going to go for this double C. We'll see if it comes out. And I'm like, dude, what? But he's like, he's humble. You know what I mean? He's a nice cat. He's a good hang. Like, we got to hang with him we went to Buffalo Wild Wings afterwards. We got to hang and talk about all the crazy things that he's done. And it's like, that is such an educational experience in and of itself.
Well, yeah, and like how amazing for you as a young musician to see him in that situation, like this trumpet icon, right?
Yeah.
And you're looking at him like, wow, he could never mess anything up. And then he's humble enough to like present himself in that way. And then that in turn changes the way that you view him as a musician and the way that you actually want to be as a musician. So
yeah, that's and even the way that you view yourself as a musician, the fact that he's cracking jokes about like, oh well, I hope I hit this, but it's still like, I know, like as a fellow trumpet player, I know you've probably gotten in those moments where you're like, okay, hope it comes out
hope
today.
It comes out every day.
You're like, hope it comes out. And the fact that Wayne Bergeron is saying that same thing that has rattled through my head for years, it's like, okay, we're everyone is a person, everyone is a real person.
Totally.
Yeah. That reminds me of when Jeff Hamilton came and did a clinic too.
I love Jeff.
He was listening to me play, and we were playing through one of his charts. I can't remember which one. And the band missed a hit. I think I was like 22, right around that same age. And the band missed a hit. He cut. He's like, I'm not going to blame you. I'm not going to blame you. I'm going to blame you. And he pointed right at me. And damn near I went to the practice room after that rehearsal and I played through that chart 20 times. And I never made that mistake again.
Yeah. Dude, humbling moments, man.
Humbling moments are so important in your success. Like failure, in that little bit, having failure and being called out on it, especially from icons, people who are iconic in the craft, kicks your butt into gear. Like Evan, what you were saying, those couple of comments that he gave you just makes all the difference. It's one thing to hear it from your professor at a university. It's one thing to hear it from your private lesson instructor. It's one thing to hear it from whoever. It's another thing to hear it from a person who is a pro and who's made a name for themselves.
Yeah.
And who you idol, like, I don't want to say idolize, maybe you idolize, but just somebody who you look up to,
Right. Yeah, there's a certain weight that it carries, when it comes for somebody who you really appreciate and respect. And that was one of the things I think about actually going to Michigan State that I will never ever take for granted is the amount of guest artists that we got to work with.
Right.
And all those moments that I got to be around, so many great artists, but there was it was the little conversations and the little things they pointed out. I think Mark Whitfield was probably one of the most inspirational for me, where
totally.
I was actually sitting next to him on the tour bus, and he was talking to me about solo development and stuff, and how when you take a solo, you don't want to just throw a bunch of information at people. You want to sing. And he just talked about really singing through your instrument, and what it feels like when you get to that state of it's organic and you're speaking and you're saying something that has value. For me, I don't remember what tune it was. It was a blues or something that I soloed on, and I remember I had worked out a bunch of stuff in the practice room, and I felt pretty confident. Yeah. And I came back, and I think it was 2-3 nights in a row where he heard me play this solo, and finally on the fourth day, one of the, and maybe the second to last day of tour, he confronted me about it and was I've heard you play a lot of your stuff. He's why don't tonight you just don't play anything that you've worked out, and just listen to yourself, listen to the musicians around you, and see what you can create spontaneously. And that to me was the moment of that's music. It's that spontaneity, it's that that freedom, but because I respected Mark Whitfield so much, and I had watched YouTube videos of him for years and years and years before that, and leading up to it, suddenly my eyes were so much wider, because I was wow, that is the guy that I needed to hear that from,
Right.
It's a different thing.
So one thing that you talked about is the spontaneity and improvisation. And Evan, I've known you. I've definitely known about you for a long time. I mean, I think the first gig that we played on the same ticket was it at the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor with?
Oh, word! Was that with Jacob?
Yeah, you were with Jacob.
Oh,
Jacob. And I remember watching you. I was like, whoa, damn, he's good. And then it was to the point afterwards where Haruki had taken a video of you, and he sent it to me. It was like, look, dude, you got to practice. I was like, you're right. But I want to hit on your improvisation, talking about spontaneity. Where do you get that confidence to be spontaneous with it? Because that's a really hard thing for a lot of young musicians to get over, is they work these things out, but getting the confidence to actually try different things and being okay with maybe falling on your face with it. Where does that come from?
Well, hey man, I mean, to anyone who is struggling with improvisation, just know it takes time, and it comes with time. As soon as you said improvisation, I audibly heard myself take a breath. I went, because I knew I had to answer this question, right? Man, it really comes from a place of relaxedness. I think it has to, in order to truly be free and spontaneous. Because you spend a lot of time working on melodic playing. I think it comes from a lot of things, but what I've kind of dialed it down to is the very first thing is listening and taking things that you enjoy listening to. It doesn't have to be jazz. It just has to be music that you enjoy listening to. And you take melodic fragments that spark creativity for you, or they spark joy for you. And you take those fragments and you start moving them around, and you play them in any way possible, right? And you start to develop freedom slowly. That's the process. Is you take it through all 12 keys. 12 keys is the one that everyone jumps to immediately, but 12 keys is maybe only the first step, but then it's also, can I play this like backwards? Can I play it upside down? And then can I like invert things different ways? My favorite thing, but one of the craziest improvisation lessons that I've ever gotten was Kris Johnson played Donna Lee backwards for me.
Whoa! What?
And I did not know what to say. I left that lesson defeated.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, look, I can play it in all 12 keys too. And he's like, here it is in B major. Played it in B major, Here it is in E major. Play it in E major. It's like,
woo!
That dude. And then he would be like, here, check out this 12-tone row that I made. And he's like got a whole like PDF on his computer, all these 12-tone rows he's working on.
What?
And he's like, this is the scale that goes with each one. And like, he's like, yeah, I got this one in all 12 keys too. Look at this pattern. It's just like, but to take it all the way back, I mean, that's mastery, right? But
yeah.
to take it from like ground zero, I would just encourage somebody to like take your favorite song and like learn like one melodic fragment from that and then develop it. Like take your favorite part and then just start moving it around and shifting it and seeing what you can do with just that melodic fragment. That's improvisation to me at its core. And like then once you're up on stage, like the confidence and all that, it takes time to develop. It takes so much time. I still feel like uneasy on certain things. If like I'd be lying if I said that like giant steps doesn't still like scare the crap out of me every time I like try.
Absolutely.
Like there's just so much going on. It's so much information that your brain has to process. But the more and more you do it, the more those things become like habitual. You become trained, your ears do the work for you over time. So, but yeah, it takes time, and there's no like method. There's no one direction shortcut thing. It's just being enveloped in it all the time and consistently receiving intel on your craft and then just putting it to work and trying to improve every day and work on those areas that you suck. Like take the spot you suck at and make that your priority for the day.
Yeah, that goes with Jojo Mayer. I don't know if you guys. I look up to him. He's definitely a huge inspiration for me. He's a drum set player, but he talks about if you sound good in a practice room, you're doing it wrong. That's like a quote that he stands by pretty firmly. For me, it's you want to have that reformation of, okay, I'm working on this thing that I'm not good at, and then I'm gonna get good at it, and that's gonna happen in a practice room, obviously. But then I want to spend most of my time on things that I'm not good at, which is tough for a lot of musicians to sit there by yourself and work on things that you're not good at.
Right.
But that's the difference from the good players to the great players.
Very true.
But also, when you're telling me about playing Donna Lee backwards, that reminded me of I was watching Joe Rogan earlier today, and who was he talking to? I can't remember who he was talking to, but this just stuck with me too. He's like, he's talking to Lance Armstrong. He's like, in order to be like the best at something, you kind of have to be a little crazy. You got to you kind of have to be a little out of your mind in order to get to that level that nobody's ever been to before. You don't, if you're just in this box, like, okay, I do these things and then X plus Y equals Z or whatever, you're not going to get to the highest level that you possibly can. And that really resonated with me. In order to like be the greatest at something, you kind of have to be out of your mind a little bit. And you have to do things like what you were just saying, creating PDFs of 12-tone whatever, learning Donna Lee backwards. Like, what the hell? But that's the stuff that makes you leagues above people that wouldn't even have thought of that. So when you said that, that immediately popped in my head. And now I'm gonna go learn Donnelly backwards. On drums or on vibes or something.
I think it's just having the discipline to take those things that like are like so tedious and frustrating, but then not looking them as tedious and frustrating, right? Like looking at them more as like that's the objective, that's the challenge. I'm gonna rise to the occasion.
Yeah,
and you see that across the board, whether that's whether it's a comedian or a podcaster or a great athlete, or or a great business person. It's figuring out what's that thing that's like really tough to attain and achieve, and how can I do it in the healthiest way?
Yeah.
How can I make that my center of focus without it aggravating me?
Yeah. Athletes inspire me more than musicians do in a way.
Like, have you guys seen the new MJ documentary?
Dude, I was literally just gonna say that, dude. I was just gonna say it.
Twice. I've watched it through twice.
It's good, man. It is good.
Twice.
Yeah, that's one crazy thing though. When they're talking about MJ like not being great when he was like younger, and I'm like, wow, I didn't actually realize that he wasn't like. I just never thought that he was never like one of the best players to ever live. And I do say one of, because I don't want anyone to come after me and be like, oh, well, LeBron, like, MJ's still one of the best. Like, come on. He, like, look at the Bulls from then. Yeah, 6? What? Yeah, but it's crazy. It's like, and in some ways, like, there's no doubt about, like, I really respect that, right? But in some ways, you have to say, like, at what point is that damaging? Because I wonder if you would ask him, did you enjoy that as much as you possibly could have? Because he's talking about, like, after, first championship, he's like, okay, next day in the gym, like, practicing, all that. Did you take the time to enjoy that? Because that's a real part. For me, that's something in my life over the last 6-7 months, really honestly the last, like, year, that I've been thinking about, why am I doing something? And letting the why influence the what, like, rather than like, okay, I'm going to do this because I want to be successful. It's like, at a certain point, what does success mean? What does money mean? Does that mean that I'm going to be happy eventually? Or am I just going to be rich? Or am I just going to be famous? Like, that doesn't mean anything if I'm not happy, if I'm not enjoying it, because I want to get to that spot because I'm not happy where I am. But I feel like to get to that spot and enjoy it, I got to learn how to be happy where I am first. Because then that will influence all of that stuff, So it's like a double-edged sword. It's like, yeah, you might be the best in the world, but how happy are you being the best in the world? I was actually watching a Joe Rogan podcast when they were talking about that. They were talking about Anthony Bourdain, about how obviously, so tragically, he took his own life. But he's also somebody who got to do things that most people would only dream of doing, traveling around the world, eating food, making TV shows. Like most people could only dream of that, but it has to be a give and take kind of thing, like, and I don't know, that's just something I've been trying to take to my playing as well, like slowing down and thinking, wait a second, I need to understand why I'm doing this before I'm just like, oh, that's a cool lick. I need to understand the inspiration behind it first. You know what I mean? I need to say, like, that feeling that made me feel a certain way, and I need to process that feeling, and then every time I play it, I need to try and feel that way, because I know for me, that's one thing in my early days of playing, and really through college, I was like really obsessed with like being able to play it right. Playing it right, playing it perfectly. Don't miss notes. Don't frack notes. Don't play any wrong notes. Like if it says flat 5, don't ever play the natural 5. Which, yeah, that's a rule you should follow. But like being able to say, like, I'm going after the feeling, and if that means I don't play bop right now, then I'm not playing bop. Like that's a line that I've had to draw in the sand for myself. Like, don't play all the notes. play less notes and make it feel good. It's gotta.
And that goes back to Evan, what you were saying is just singing. Whatever you're playing, it's got to sing. It's got to sing, because that's gonna, at the end of the day, that's gonna speak volumes to so many more people.
I love that we're talking about this, like, because this is like literally the last month of my life has been all of this stuff in a mixing bowl, like, and that's like literally why I wrote Gratitude. Like, I mean, literally, dude, this everything we're talking about right now is I got to a point in my life where I was so distraught. I mean, especially because of COVID, like not having the shows. This was supposed to be the busiest summer of my life. It was going to be the craziest, like the most gigs I've ever had lined up. You know, I had all these recording sessions. But anyhow, like it all went out the window, and it, as it did for everybody. And somehow I had to still like learn how to wake up in the morning and just deal with myself. And like, am I happy doing this? Am I happy just like being at home? And like, I mean, now I'm still making songs every day. I'm still writing in my room and still like have my place, and everything's cool. Like, and I don't really need much else. And I had to come to terms with that and like really just be grateful for the ability to like be happy and content with what I already have going on, and not be so concerned about like trying to like make it, or like trying to like get recognition in some way, but really just being thankful for the opportunity to wake up and do it.
Yeah. Evan, I'm like, those words are super therapeutic for me, man. Thank you.
No doubt.
I sincerely, that helps me out a lot, and that's going to help a lot of people out in these trying times. Just realizing the things that you have, and focusing on that, not focusing on the things that you might have lost or didn't happen. That's the fight that we gotta fight. Like getting through this time and realizing the things that we have and that we're appreciative for, because those things will happen again. They will happen. If as long as we continue to do what we're doing.
And honestly, I think to add to that, they will happen with greater magnitude.
Yeah.
Because if you continue to grind and push through and stay thankful for what you have in the moment, then those things that you would have had before will be multiplied. You know, those, whatever it was you were doing before quarantine, if you maintain the right energy, then whatever you would have had before quarantine, when quarantine is done, it's gonna like maybe triple or quadruple in size. So yeah, I mean, that's like a big thing to recognize. Like, it's not over yet. You still have time, you know, you still have time to get those things done.
And I think we've hit on the idea of what the new single's about. I mean, in a little bit, and like Gratitude in itself, we were listening to it the other day, and man, what a vibe. What a vibe.
Yeah.
We listened to it on repeat.
Yeah.
Over and over.
We were listening to it together. It was like, as soon as it started, him and I were both like, whoa, okay.
Some serious vibes going on.
Yeah, man.
So for everybody, if you have a minute, which you do, check out Evan Taylor Gratitude on Spotify. Evan, it's on Spotify.
It's on everything.
It's on everything. So check
it out.
Give it a listen. Give it like 20 listens.
It's great.
Like, great. I encourage everybody to think about, especially if you're a musician, or even if you've been affected by this pandemic in any, if you're a contractor and you've been affected, your business has been affected, just think about the words that Evan was talking about and listen to that tune, and let let yourself be in the moment, because this tune is awesome. It's such a great vibe. And Evan, now specifically you talking about where your head was at when you were writing this and when you're making this tune, it just speaks even more volumes than it already did, not knowing what that was, you know.
Man, thank you. I mean, it means a lot, dude. I'm glad that that it had that effect, because without me writing to try to affect people, that's the effect it had on me. I mean, I wrote it in a time of like an emotional time where I didn't know what was next. I was actually afraid in a lot of ways. I started, meditating and started just doing that first thing in the morning. I think it was really helpful for me. But that's what I do in the morning. I go sit outside, and usually, sun's out, and just 10 minutes of complete rest and thankfulness to still have my body and still be able to move in the morning. There's people who can't move. There's people who don't have food and don't have a roof over their head. And so, and recognizing those things and recognizing like how great I've actually had it despite any struggles that have happened in my life. I really truly feel blessed. I feel like God has taken care of me and put the right people in my life to be able to move forward and do what I need to do. So I'm thankful for my family and my friends and my body and my, my musical abilities above all else, I think, because without music, I don't know what else there would be for me.
So you're pretty religious, man. You kind of grew up in the church. Can you tell us like how that was, especially as a musician?
I grew up Christian in Michigan. My family is Christian. We, I have a very different view of like the religion realm, I think.
Sure.
Now that I'm older and I have a grander perspective on people and how people operate and how people interact with each other. When I was young, I accepted Christ as my savior, and then I was at Bible camp, a youth group, and I was in church every week, and if I didn't go, I was in trouble. It was like that. And for a long time, that's what it looked like for me. And I think as I got later into high school and like some things like kind of traumatic things started happening in my life, I got further away from it.
Sure.
I definitely like pulled away. It was like, all right, no, this ain't for me. Like I gotta I want to go do my own thing. And especially when I was in college, I was just like out wilding, doing whatever. So it took me a few years like before I could even consider like, sitting down and like even like praying. Like wasn't a thing for me. But now I guess as I've gotten older and like I actually found like some longing for it, like as if like I almost can't operate without having that time every morning where like both consciously meditating, not spiritually, just consciously meditating in my physical body and my mind, because that's where I think a lot of people go wrong, is they take religion and they say this is, they just throw it at you like, here, take the scripture and pray and things will get better. And that's sometimes that's not the case. Like sometimes like there is like literally like mental health issues, underlying mental health issues, and like physical issues and stuff that people can't control.
Right.
And those things need to be at the forefront, because you can't heal what's broken without like, actually finding the root of the issue. And I think you can pray and you can ask God for this and that, but he also has given us the ability to be able to like sit down and like invest in ourselves. Like, and if you're not taking care of your body and your mind yourself with the tools that you have, then I think you're not really gaining access to everything that is available to you. And I don't think, for me, that scripture or like God or anything was as applicable without that investment in myself too. So now I have a deeper appreciation for what scripture means and how I can take certain parts and apply it to my life.
That's a very awesome perspective. Backstory. I grew up in a Lutheran church. I went to private school for 8 years. Same kind of thing. You go chapel Wednesday, Bible school Sunday, church Sunday, that type of thing. Same thing, high school, things got a little bit of a stray. And then recently I've been playing a lot in a church, Kensington Church.
Oh, that's what's up.
Playing drums? Man, playing drums. Good musicians, great vibe.
That's tight.
But I remember one specific message that they had where they talked about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And for me, it's like, that's the stuff that we need to be talking about. And that goes specifically with what you were talking about. You can pray but like, we have to assess our mental health. We have to be, and we have the tools and the resources to do that. So for me, that's when I was like, all right, I'm buying back in, because that's what we need to be talking about. And how you can apply that to scripture. How do you apply that to the words of Jesus? All of that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, it's different. Well, it's crazy just how your upbringing can have an influence on your music. You know what I mean? Because for me, I grew up, as far as religiously, I grew up loosely in the Methodist church and loosely in a mosque. My parents were split up. My mom is Methodist. All my family on my mom's side is Methodist, and my dad and all my family on my dad's side is very Muslim. And my dad was actually, when I was growing up, my dad was the imam. And for anybody who will listen to this and doesn't know what an imam is, it's like the priest of the mosque, right? My dad was the imam at the mosque in my hometown.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. My dad is very devout. Always been very devout.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I had those two things where, like my Christian side was saying, be Christian, and my Muslim side was saying, be Muslim. And for a long time, I didn't want anything to do with any of it, because I just saw all of these. It was like there was never anything that was like positive to me personally out of those experiences. And what I realized, that gave me like kind of like an identity disorder. Like, and that actually moved way forward in my playing. Like, it took me so long, and I'm still figuring out, like, who do I want to be as a musician, as an artist? Like, not, I feel like the really surface level stuff is like, and maybe not even super surface level, but it's like, what do I stand for? I feel like those are across the levels. Like, as a person, everybody's figuring out, what do I stand for? But like, as a musician, what do I have to say? I don't feel right. Like, I studied classical trumpet in college primarily. I studied jazz too, but classical was my primary focus in college. And I never felt like I belonged in that world, kind of the same way that I didn't really feel like I belonged in the church. But I played jazz, and that's what I thought was cool. But when I played, I didn't feel like I belonged. I was like, there's something about me that doesn't belong here. And it took actually playing with guys like, Haruki and Andy and Cortez, and playing with all those guys, to realize that I don't necessarily have to belong in those groups, and us talking about that right now just brought me back to those days when I was a kid, that I was like, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I didn't feel like I belonged in the mosque. I didn't feel like I really belonged in the church. And that transferred over to being a musician, where now I don't really consider myself very religious, but I do consider myself very spiritual. And I think that's in the same vein as, like, I can consider myself this kind of thing, whereas a musician, I don't feel like I have to consider myself a jazz musician or I have to consider myself a classical musician, because in reality, it's like those things are all just groups, right?
Totally.
Those are like niche groups. And if I don't fit into one, that's fine. It doesn't mean the music that I create is any less worthy of being heard. Or it's any worse than if it was jazz, or if it was
right,
or if it was rock and roll. You know?
And what we're talking about here is like, especially in terms of identity, our perspective and perception of like what we're supposed to be as humans is so small. It's so tiny. Like we're so fed by this whole like bay of emotions, and everybody longs to belong in like a group or like a thing, and ultimately what we're feeling is that calling that's like to attain that level of acceptance of like who we have become as a person, because everyone is like brought into this world and has no perspective, you know, they have no, but we all feel that longing of like connectedness and trying to be a part of something that's greater than us. And for me, you know, for me, that's how I found my my comfort and solace is like through, you know, praying to God and reading the Bible and meditating and taking care of myself. For another person, that might look completely different, and that's okay.
Yes.
And I think our system is flawed in that way, where it's like people believe like, oh, this is the one way that you have to do it. And there's only one Buddha, there's only one God, there's only and I think ultimately it is true. There's only one God that's like a creator. But I think it comes in a lot of forms, and I sometimes it gets lost because then what happens when someone is born in a body that they don't feel comfortable in, or somebody who's born in skin that they don't feel comfortable in, or or if, you know, say someone likes someone of the same sex, then what? Like then who's to blame? Like that person is that way, they're born that way, and then suddenly they have this crisis in their life, and there's trauma there because they can't interact with people the way that they believe they're supposed to interact with people because of the system that's surrounding them. So then there's all this trauma, and they spend their whole life wondering if they're supposed to be different or if they're supposed to do things a certain way. And that's where I struggled, because, you know, I want freedom for those people. You know, I want those people to feel safe, and so that's a thing to be reckoned with. And I think that's something that's super cool about our generation is suddenly now we're standing up for people of color, we're standing up for transgender people, we're standing up for the LGBT community, and we're saying, hey, these people are just like us. And that's that sense of unity and like coming together and being like, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, it doesn't matter if you're Buddhist, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian from the Bible Belt. You know, we're all one. We all come from the same place, and we're all going to die one day. And so it's important to recognize that we're all the same, we're all equal, and, you know, as Martin Luther King said, we're not free till we're all free.
Truth.
And we're getting into some deep shit right now. This is wonderful.
It's the truth, though.
Yeah,
I mean, this stuff needs to be talked about. You know what I mean?
Because it's so applicable to, as a creator, how you're inspired. You know, you're inspired by your background. You're inspired by how you were brought up, whether it's through this religious community or whether it's through this. But like at the end of the day, it's music or poetry or anything that people can just connect to and interpret in their own way and have their own just have their own interpretation whatever you're trying to say, which I think is beautiful. I think that's a wonderful thing that makes us all human, and connects us a little bit more. It's like, you may be from so and so with this kind of background, you create this thing that so and so from this background really likes, that could be polar opposite, and there's a connection there that maybe was not meant, maybe wasn't there or couldn't have been there beforehand. And I think that's what's so beautiful about creativity and music and art and anything else in that realm, is the fact that you can take people with different ideas of how things should be, but connect them. And then from there, we can have a conversation,
Yeah.
It's like going to see like a concert. You go see a concert, especially like when I go see people like Dave Matthews, or you go, any other like pretty well renowned musician, that attracts a lot of people. You see a lot of different kind of people, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I think it's super wonderful. So,
yeah, one thing that I know, so in Paddlebots, I don't know, Evan, if you noticed, we went radio silent for a while. We've been radio silent for a while, other than saying like people's birthdays or anything. And the intent behind it was clearing the airwaves so that the messages that needed to be heard, there wasn't a lot of stuff in the way of that message, right? And that was us on a personal level saying, no, we need to stand for this,
Totally.
But one thing that we were talking about is listening deeper. And when I say that, I don't mean like, yeah, well, listen to the piano. No, like listen to the influences, because societally we have gotten to a level where music is consumed purely for entertainment, and we don't think about it oftentimes. I mean, a lot of times musicians do and other artists do, but the general population doesn't necessarily think, where did that come from? Like, I can guarantee you there's a ton of people that don't realize country came from Black people. You know what I mean? They just don't know that stuff, and they don't realize where these influences are. They don't realize that, I guess pop music, where these influences come from, or they don't even take a second to think where this enjoyment that they're getting. Because I mean, right now, like rap is like pop music, right? Popular music. So they don't think about what that person had to go through to get themselves to that point where that song came out. That's a super important thing to think about. And
a
huge, just feel like we're not.
A huge example of that, and Haruki was saying this too, is Marvin Gaye, "What's Going On." Like, that's a song that everybody knows, and they vibe like, "What's going on?" But like, that song is about police brutality. True, man. So,
or in the first viral days of YouTube, "Chocolate Rain."
Yeah,
"Chocolate Rain." Some stay dry and others feel the pain. Like, like, and that's something I was guilty of that as well. Like not thinking deeper into it and not realizing. It took me watching a Tezande interview talking about that. He was like, well, that song's about, racial injustice. And I'm like, oh shit. Like that's fucking heavy. You know what I mean? Like, I think we as a society need to have more critical thinking, think deeper, listen deeper.
That's that brings out a perspective in music in particular that you just have a newfound appreciation for that song that you've listened to 10,000 times.
Yeah,
it's like listening to it for the first time again, which is a wonderful thing.
All right. That concludes part 1 of our interview with Evan Taylor. Join us back here Thursday, December 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for part 2. Thank you all so much for listening, and see you next time.